The 2024 Monster Manual has been out for a little bit now, and it's packed with some of the most formidable monsters that we have seen in D&D. But which ones are my favorites? Well, in this video, you're going to find out. So let's get started. I want to quickly tell you about the Golden Maple Miniatures Paint Face and Skin Color Set. If you paint minis, you know how tricky skin tones can be, but this set makes it easy with smooth application, quick drying layers, and a water-based formula. So mistakes, just wipe them away. It's great for detail work, no graininess, and works with both brushes and airbrushes. Plus, it's non-toxic and safe. If you want to grab a set, you can use our code for 10% off at checkout. The code will be down in the description, as well as the link for you to make the purchase yourself. Now, let's get into our content. So in this video, we are going to be talking about 16 monsters from various player character level tiers. These tiers are going to consist of low-level monsters, which is going to be anywhere from 1st to 5th level PC, should be able to handle them. It's going to be mid-level monsters, which is anything from 5th through 10th level. We're going to have a high-level monsters, which is 10th level and above. And then we're going to talk about some epic level monsters that is anything from 15th level and onward. So if you love Dungeons and Dragons, make sure to subscribe and comment below with your favorite monster. One of the things I did not cover in depth in my Monster Manual review video for the 2024 edition is the on-hit, no-save conditions. Now, there's a lot of monsters in the book that have this. Most of it's just minor inconveniences, though. We're talking about things that if you get hit with like a tentacle, it might grapple you. In some instances, not only does it grapple you, it might also cause a restrained condition. Some of the bigger monsters, like some of the giants, might hit you and knock you prone when they hit you. Other things might be a animated rug of smothering, might wrap around you and blind you, right? So there's some other things like that. At the deafened condition, you've got the poisoned condition, you have the charmed condition, frightened condition, a suffocate condition, and a burning condition. Which the burning condition deals like 1d4 damage every round. It's not anything crazy, and with an action, you can put the burning condition out. So these are all pretty minor in the grand scheme of things. But then there are a few monsters that have some pretty OP on-hit, no-save conditions. For example, the Mind Flayer has been brought up. Now, the Mind Flayer, when it hits you with its tentacle, not only are you grappled, you are also going to be restrained. And that's fine, kind of, but you're also stunned, which means you can't do anything. The problem with that is that once the Mind Flayer gets their next turn, they can try to eat your brain. That does a lot of damage and can kill you. So a lot of people online have been talking about how cheap this feels, and I have to be honest, I can see why they say that. However, I don't think it's that big of a deal. In fact, I actually think this is something that's going to make certain monsters feel far more unique. And it's not like a ton of monsters have something that is that powerful. In fact, I was going through the book and I found that there are 103 monsters in this book that have a on-hit, no-save condition. And again, like I said, most of them very minor. My count that I did that includes 103 monsters does not include the appendix and animals. I do know there's more in there, like the crocodile and things like that also have this. But I figured none of the things in the appendix had anything really game-breaking, so I wasn't going to continue to spend hours going through it. If you know of one of the animals in there that has something that's really OP, feel free to drop that in the comments below. But I did want to talk about this in this video a bit because I felt like that needed to be mentioned since I didn't mention it in my original review. So again, some of the worst ones, like I said, was the Mind Flayer with the extract brain. Now, extracting a brain does still require a save. So again, it's powerful. It really kind of comes down to those 2 rounds. You know, you can have a party member try to help you. But if you fail that 1 save on that second round that the Mind Flayer gets, there's a really high probability your character is dead and can't be brought back to life. So there is that. The other one is the Tarrasque. The Tarrasque really stood out to me because of the bite attack, which then auto grapples, and then the next round they can swallow you. You do have a chance to get out of the grapple on the next round, but the Tarrasque also, I believe, does have multiple attacks. So if they bite you with their first attack, I believe they can swallow you with their second. Another creature with a very similar ability to this is the Kraken, that can also do the same thing. It grapples you with its tentacle. It has an extra attack, so it can either fling you, which can throw you at another creature, doing damage to you and another creature. It throws you up to 60 feet. Or it could also swallow you, and then, again, but all these things that swallow you, you also will take acid damage every round. So it's pretty tough to deal with. But these are creatures that are very high-level creatures. So again, I'm not that worried about these abilities. Again, I think a lot of people complained about monsters weren't powerful enough in the 2014 edition, and this slight tweak will make a big difference to that, as well as give these creatures a little bit more of a threatening and scary feel, which we did kind of talk about in that review video. So what do you think? Do you like this change, or does it feel too punishing to the players? Let me know in the comments. So for my low-level monsters that are currently my favorite in the 2024 D&D Monster Manual, I have 5 creatures I have chosen. Of these creatures I've chosen for various reasons. It's not always about what's the most powerful or anything like that. Some of these I just think are fun to use for a variety of reasons, and I'm going to try and elaborate on that as I talk about them. So the first one I want to talk about is the animated Rug of Smothering. This, as well as creatures like the Dark Mantle and Cloakers, I think are very interesting to use because they do something pretty unique. You know, when they attack, they can wrap around a player character, making them grappled, blinded, you know, restrained, all these things. And not only does this then do some damage, but it forces the party around them to go, ooh, should I hit the rug wrapped around my party member? It's gonna cause damage to my friend too. So I really like this, especially if you have more than one in a combat. And in fact, one thing I thought would be really cool, when I was making my notes, I thought it would be hilarious to have a con man or a swindler who has like maybe a large wagon, and in it is nothing but a bunch of rugs, animated rugs of smothering. And so as the party goes in to look at his wares, they get attacked by these rugs, and all the, you know, they're now blinded, deafened, and now they got to fight their way out of it. And I thought it would be a really cool way for this merchant to accumulate wealth by killing people with rugs. So anyways, I thought that'd be kind of funny. But yeah, there's other creatures that are kind of similar. You know, like I said, the Cloaker, the Dark Mantle, they can kind of do similar things. So this one, though, it's a +5 to hit with 2d6 plus 3 damage. This thing could kill first level adventurers very easily. If it doesn't kill him, it's going to knock him to 0 within a round or two. And so if you don't have a lot of these, the party should be able at first level still to handle these guys. But it could drop them down to at least 0 hit points and make it feel kind of tough. And a little bit of a nuisance as well to your party. The second creature on my list is a Displacer beast. This is a D&D staple. It was in the D&D movie. Very, very cool creature. Obviously, who doesn't like a large cat with tentacles, right? It has this ability called Displacement, which makes it incredibly hard to hit, causing whatever's attacking it to have disadvantage. It also has an ability called Avoidance, which allows it on saving throws to be able to make a save, instead of half damage, it takes no damage. So that's a pretty big deal. This creature already has 76 hit points. I would not advise throwing this at a first level party, but maybe third, fourth level party that maybe has, some things in its arsenal that it could probably handle this. It does have a multi-attack. It can do its rend, which is a +6, 1d10 +4 damage, a tentacle attack, which is a +6, 2d6 +4 damage. So it can do quite a bit of damage, especially if you have another creature with it. This thing can definitely whittle down a party and pose a threat to low-level adventurers. Really play up how its abilities. And if you haven't seen the D&D Honor Among Thieves movie, at least look up the Displacer Beast and how it was used in that movie, and try your best to narrate fun ways and how this creature stalks its prey and things like that. I think it is a very cool monster. The next one that is on my list is one that I believe has gotten a massive improvement for a couple reasons. And that is the Hobgoblins. Now, in the new monster manual, these creatures have pack tactics for their warriors, which is their lowest level ones. Now, if you know anything about Hobgoblins, they are more militant, they're very tactical, and so they're not going to travel by themselves. They're going to travel in probably packs or groups anyway. And they hit pretty hard. The warrior can hit +3 with 2d10 +1 damage. So it's not a ton on the bonus side, but 2d10 damage is quite a bit. And if they're hitting with advantage and they're going to have a better chance of critical hits. My experience with advantage is that I roll a lot more crits, especially when I have quite a few monsters on the battlefield. Let's just assume I'm throwing out 6 of these guys. The chances of getting a critical hit are probably 1 in every 2 to 3 rounds. So you should be able to get at least 1 critical hit off. Again, at first level, this is very OP. They're going to mess your guys up. Especially if you decide, I'm going to pair them up with the warlord or a captain. Those guys grant advantage to their allies. The captain grants advantage with their aura of authority for a 10-foot radius to all allies, and the warlord grants it to anyone within 30 feet. So this could be anything. They could have regular goblins that they're giving, advantage to. This can really make combat very difficult very quickly. So just take that into account. But these are going to be fun monsters that you can probably use even up into 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th level, especially when you pair them with captains and warlords and maybe even some other things. So again, Hobgoblins I think are great for low level up into middle levels. Another monster that is a D&D staple that I have seen used in many campaigns is a Shadow. And this is cool because they are hard to kill. One, they take half damage because of their ethereal nature. They also can really whittle down your fighters and things like that. But even worse, they can kill some of your weaker characters very quickly, like with 2 hits. So they have what's called a draining swipe. This is a +4 to hit, 1d6 +2 damage. And this one also will drain their strength by 1d4. If you have 2 of these creatures, and let's just say you have a rogue that's getting close with them because they're like, I'm going to, use my sneak attack damage. If they get hit by this thing twice, if their strength is 8, there's a chance that 1 or 2 of these creatures could drop them within 2 rounds. Again, that 27 hit points is deceiving because that's really kind of like having 54 hit points just because regular attacks are only going to be doing half damage. They can also pass through things. As long as there is at least an inch of space, they can pass through that space without spending extra movement. They have Shadow Stealth, which means as a bonus action, they can take the hide action in dim light or darkness. So if you have a party that has dark vision, for example, they're probably not lighting torches in dungeons. A creature like this is going to be able to hide as a bonus action every round, making it really hard for them to even spot this guy. he's then going to have advantage to attack because he can't be seen. So again, shadows are fantastic creatures. You know, I would even say maybe third levels where you want to start thinking about these guys. They're going to pose a threat right off the rip. So be careful with these as well. You don't want to overwhelm your party with something like this, but shadows are a very fun creature to use. I like to tie them to puzzles. In fact, in a game I ran last week, we had 4 black orbs in a room, and the idea was if they smashed those, the shadow would die right away. Unfortunately, not a single party member tried to smash one. So this was my D&D group that is more cautious and thinks everything is trapped. And part of that's because most of them come from the AD&D days where you have to check for traps on pretty much everything. So they are extremely cautious. The next creature that I think you can throw at first level adventurers and is definitely one that when 2014 came out became one of my favorites right away. In fact, it was my first favorite creature in the 2014 Monster Manual, and that was zombies. I believe it was actually in the Player's Handbook as well in the 2014. But the reason zombies, I think, are so cool is you can throw a lot of them at your party. They move very slow, so tactically, if you're using battle mats and miniatures, your party, your adventurers should be able to navigate around to avoid them. Unless they make a wrong move, they might pin themselves in and then, you know, actually get attacked. But they don't have a lot of hit points. Zombies have 15 hit points, which is down from the 2014 D&D Monster Manual. Their damage is up, though. They do a slam attack, which is +3, and instead of a 1d6 +1, it's now a 1d8 +1. Again, it's up by just a little bit, which I like that. The Undead Fortitude works exactly the same as it did before. It's the DC for them. If they get dropped to 0 hit points, they have to make a saving throw. And it is 5 plus the damage taken unless there was a critical hit or radiant damage. So again, it's not too OP. In fact, I've used creatures with Undead Fortitude. Most of my creatures never make the save because your party's doing, 15 points of damage, and so it's a DC of 20 or DC of 15. Like, it's always in that 15 to 20 range. For some reason, it's very hard for me to make those saves, which is a bummer because I think zombies are kind of cool, and that's the thing that makes them cool, is that they can keep getting up and keep coming back for more. So again, those are my favorite low-level monsters where I recommend you can throw them at your party anywhere between 1st and 5th level. A couple of these, definitely harder to beat than others. Some that made honorable mention for me are kobolds. I still love kobolds in the new edition. Still have pack tactics. Again, most creatures with pack tactics I really love. You could even look at things like low-level just animals like wolves, crocodiles, the grapple condition they do, the prone condition from the wolves. Like, those things can make combat really fun. And again, it changes things up. So, really like that. Now getting into the mid-level monsters. These are recommended from 5th through 10th level, give or take a level or two. And it'll depend on, again, what magic items your characters have, spell selections, party composition, things like that. The first one that's on my list here is the Black Pudding. A lot of the different oozes, like the gray ooze, things like that, have some really cool abilities, like the fact that if they get attacked, they, because of their corrosive nature, I think it's called, corrosive form, the creature who hit them is going to take acid damage. So with the Black Pudding, it's 1d8 acid damage. Their weapon is also, I think, going to take some damage and be less effective. So it's going to be -1. I think that's only for non-magical. But then they also have this thing where if they hit you and you have metal armor, because again, it applies to metal. If they hit your armor, they are going to start whittling that away. That's because of their ability called Dissolving Pseudopod, which will damage their armor. So after a round of this, I think it's like a -1, and I think it keeps going down until 10. Once it's a 10, the armor's completely broken. However, if the armor's not completely broken, I believe you can mend it to get it back to tip-top shape. Same thing with the weapons. So you can mend them. So the Black Pudding does have 68 hit points, which is a lot, which means you're gonna have to hit it quite a few times. You might want to try to use things that aren't going to dissolve from the acid. Again, spellcasters are going to really shine against them. These types of creatures are really fun to use, especially if you want to outfit your characters, your PCs, with plate armor, and they're rocking the heavy armor, and maybe you have quite a few martial characters and you want to just get rid of their little weapons and stuff like that. Like, these things are really fun. Their shields, you can get rid of their shields with it. And then if you set this up to be right before another bigger battle, say you have a black pudding in a room, but then like the next room is this wizard, right? Now it makes that wizard much more difficult, which again, I think can be a lot of fun. But you don't want to do this to kill your party. You don't want to ruin their time. You do want to pose a challenge. Combining a black pudding as like a kind of a guardian or a helper is a great way to do that. The next monster that made my list, and maybe it shouldn't be on the mid-level monsters, was a Mind Flayer. Now, I do have it here because of the CR. I think the CR wasn't very high. I think it was like a 7 or something like that. And really, its hit points aren't that high either. It's only a 99. But the reason I say you might not want to throw this at like a 5th or 6th level party is strictly because of the on-hit no-save conditions that we talked about earlier in this video. Being able to do a Mind Blast, which will stun a party, that's a pretty big deal. That's also, I believe, a cone. So Intelligence DC 15 save. If you fail, it's 68 plus 4 damage. And it recharges on a 5 or 6 D6 roll. Once the whole party is stunned, if you have more than one Mind Flayer, well, have fun dying when they go up and do an Extract Brain on the next turn. Because when you're stunned, I don't even think you get a saving throw. This can be a brutal combo if you have more than one Mind Flayer. I would not recommend throwing more than one Mind Flayer at a mid-level party. In fact, I would save Mind Flayers to be big bads if you're talking about mid-level play. Okay, and I would do them by themselves. And I would probably pair them with something much weaker. And I'm thinking like maybe a couple troglodytes. I would be very careful with this. Your party will be pissed if a Mind Flayer does this ability, say it does the Mind Blast, and starts devouring characters' brains. I do think a lot of parties would feel very upset about this. Again, I think it can be pretty awesome, and that's why this made my list. But you got to have the right group that can handle something like that. And 2, I still think you should handle it a little bit cautiously with a 6th, 7th, maybe 8th level party. There's also the fact that I even mentioned that they have spellcasting. Dominate Monster or Plane Shift to get themselves out of there. Again, great abilities. And then the tentacle attacks by themselves are still a +7, 4d8 plus 4. So again, if you're attacking a 7th level party, just doing the tentacle attack is going to take away half their hit points. And then if you do the Extract Brain on the next turn, it's 10d10 damage. Half if they make the save. So that is a lot of damage. You're pretty much going to kill them within 2 rounds. So just something to think about. The next creature on my list was not in the previous book, and that is a Primeval Owlbear. So there are 2 owlbears in this book. This is the harder one. This one has 126 hit points, AC of 16, so it is a little bit difficult to hit. It's got magic resistance. It's got a multi-attack, so it can do its Ravage twice, which is a 2d8 plus 6 damage. If it's moving more than 20 feet to get you, it adds 2d8 to that attack and knocks you prone automatically, no save. So that's 4d8 plus 6 damage. A lot of damage. If, for whatever reason, it decides to use its Screech, which also recharges on a 5 or a 6, you get a con save, DC 15, or you take 68 thunder damage, and you're incapacitated. Like, that is a pretty powerful ability right there. So, this owlbear is not one to mess with. If you pair this one up with maybe some smaller owlbears, Again, you're talking about a very dangerous encounter for mid-level adventurers, but I think this is a very cool monster to use. And again, it's a staple of D&D. Who doesn't love an owl bear, right? The next one is also a staple of D&D, but not just D&D, of Greek mythology. And I'm talking about the Hydra. So the Hydra, obviously, is a multi-headed, creature with regenerating heads as you cut them off. And this thing can be an absolute nightmare for your party. Now, on the surface, if you just look at this, you're like, oh, 184 hit points. Yeah, this could probably be handled by a 7th, 8th, 9th level party, especially if they've got the right spells, things like that, right? AC 15, right? Creature has 5 heads. However, for every head it has, that's how many attacks it gets with its bite, first of all. Second of all, that's how many reactions it gets. And because of this, every time you do 25 damage on a single turn, a head is cut off. And if you cut off all the heads, then the creature will die, right? So again, pretty straightforward. So really, if it's got 5, you could, in theory, kill it with 125 hit points because all the heads will be cut off. But it doesn't quite work that way. At the end of each of its turn, as long as it has at least 1 head, 2 are going to sprout where a head was before. So from each chopped off head. So the thing about this, if any of them were lobbed off because of fire or I believe acid, might just be fire in this one. But as a DM, maybe you want to let it be acid as well. But if it was fire, a head won't grow back. It's kind of like cauterizing the wound. So that is a good way to keep it down, right? And players, don't use meta knowledge at your table. Like, actually maybe ask your DM, would my character know this? And see if they make you do like a nature check or arcana check or whatever they decide to figure this out. The other thing is every time it sprouts a new head, it gains 20 hit points. So you could be fighting a Hydra for damn near forever if your characters don't do a lot of damage. The bite is a +8 to hit, 1d10 +5. So it's not a ton of damage, but you got to remember, first round, it's able to, as long as it's got all its heads, able to do 5 bite attacks. That's 5d10 damage. If they're attacking one creature, there's a good chance they're going to drop a mid-level character there, right? So, again, something to think about, but Hydras are a very cool creature to use. I would advise players to run when they see a Hydra. You don't want to get caught up in that mess with a Hydra where you're fighting it and it's a slog, right? Hydras are the epitome of a creature that you could fight for so long. All right, so now we're entering the high-level monsters phase. This would be anywhere between level 10 and 15, but you might not want to throw some of these at your party until even higher than that. Again, it's going to depend on composition, all those things. The first one on my list here is one that I think is really awesome. It was awesome before, who am I kidding? But that's the Cloud Giant. So if your party is getting into some issues with Cloud Giants, look out, because one Cloud Giant can wipe out a high-level party. They have 200 hit points, and they do a multi-attack. They could do, in any order they want, they could do a Thunderous Mace attack, which is a +12 with 10-foot reach. It does 3d8 +8 plus 2d6 thunder damage, which is a good amount from a single hit. The other attack it can do is called a Thundercloud. This is a +12 to hit, up to 240-foot range. So in theory, depending on, the layout of the battlefield, they could be doing this from pretty far away before your party can get even close. It's 3d6 +8 thunder damage, and if it hits, you're incapacitated, which again is pretty tough. Not only do they have those amazing attacks, they also have spell casting, and they can cast Misty Step. So Cloud Giants are not a creature you want to mess with. Especially since you got to remember, Cloud Giants most of the time probably aren't going to be by themselves, right? They're probably going to have 2-3 of them. It doesn't seem to make sense why they would just be hanging out by themselves. So don't mess with Cloud Giants. Again, players, you might want to run or try to sneak and hide and use the fact that you're smaller than a giant to your advantage. The next one could be a campaign ender for you. This one is one that I did mention in my review as one of my favorites. that has gotten significant upgrades, and that is the Draco Lich. The Draco Lich is incredibly powerful. If you just take away the lair actions, which the lair actions are brutal, they have legendary resistance 3 times a day. Their AC is 20. Their hit points are 225. They have a ability called Life Suppression, which if your party is within 60 feet of them, they can't regain hit points. So this is going to be hard, especially when you have a cleric who's like, oh, I'll cast, I don't know, Healing Word or, whatever. Lay on Hands as a paladin. None of that stuff's going to work. So there's that. On top of that, the Necrotic Breath is a con save of 20. You heard that right, 20. That is a high roll. It's a 60-foot cone, and it does 8d12 necrotic damage. So that is going to be very rough on your party. They have legendary actions, such as their Terrifying Presence, which is a Wisdom DC of 19. So again, it's a very high save. It does 2d10 psychic damage and frightens them. So you're going to have a hard time, again, moving forward and things like that. Again, it is a brutal creature, even for high-level adventurers. You might even want to wait till they get closer to 15th level. Your party can probably do the damage to take it out. But if this creature wins initiative, it's going to have legendary resistances. Again, it can do that, 3 times a day, 4 times in its lair. So it's going to be a tough creature. I do not advise taking it on. And if you are within a certain distance of its lair, which I think is a few miles, you're talking about probably some levels of exhaustion. It's going to be a tough combat. So the next one is one that I really like this creature. It is called the Reamerhaz. I hope I'm saying that right. It's the frozen terror that burns you if you get within 5 feet of it, right? It's got an ability called the Heat Aura, which any creature within 5 feet takes 3d10 fire damage. It's got 195 hit points, and AC is 17. When it bites you, it's a plus 11. It can reach 10 feet to do this. Does 2d10 plus 7 damage plus 46 fire damage. You are grappled and restrained from the bite, which means not only are you currently taking the Heat Aura of 3d10 fire damage every round, you've already been bit now, and then the next round, if it wants to, it can swallow you, which is a strength save of DC 19. And you'll take 3d6 acid damage and 3d6 fire damage. So this creature can mess you up, can mess your party up very, very quickly. Again, a very cool monster that I like. Love the miniature I have for it. I got it back with 2014. One of my favorites. So again, I think it's pretty cool. This is a creature you do not want to mess with. Now we are on to the epic tier monsters. These are monsters that can end your world. Not just end your campaign. It can destroy your whole world. So something to take into account here is if your party does not have the capability of doing massive damage, avoiding a ton of conditions, and all those things, if they don't have enough magic items, just refrain from throwing these at your party. But if your party is well suited to take these things on, then buckle up because you're going to have a great time. Pretty much all of these have 3 or 4 legendary actions, depending on if they're in their lair or not. Again, I would not throw these at your party if your party is under level 15. You want to get into the point where you're dealing with the best spells in the game, the best abilities in the game, if you're throwing these at your party. So the first one on my list is definitely a big favorite of mine. I think the art in the monster manual for this creature is great. The amount of different things this creature can do is great. And that is the Elemental Cataclysm. This thing is basically just a force of pure elemental destruction. It's going to wipe out cities, castles, hell, kingdoms. Hit points, 370 hit points. That's a lot of hit points. AC is 20. It is so powerful. This creature is immune to so many things. Acid, cold, fire, lightning, poison, thunder, blinded, charmed, deafened, exhaustion, frightened, grappled, paralyzed, petrified, poisoned, prone, restrained, stunned, and unconscious. It moves at 60 feet. It can burrow 60 feet. It can fly 80 feet. It can swim 80 feet. Again, legendary resistances 4 times per day. Multi-attack. It makes 2 elemental burst attacks. Their burst attacks are crazy. It's a plus 15. Reaches 30 feet. Range is 150 feet. And it does 5d6 plus 8 damage of any type chosen from the Cataclysm. That's acid, cold, fire, lightning, or thunder. So again, it can choose what type of damage, and it's going to be doing this at range. Now, 5d6 plus 8 isn't that powerful in and of itself, right? Here's where things get crazy. So it can do a cataclysmic event with a recharge of 4 through 6. So that is that's a 50% chance on a d6. You roll a d4 to decide what it is. The first one is Clinging Flames, which is a dex save of 23, or you are going to take 13d6 fire damage, and that's a 60-foot radius. There's Freezing Waves, which do bludgeoning damage and cold damage. Both of those are 5d8. That's also a DC 23 saving throw, strength saving throw. The next one is a Raging Storm, which is, again, 60 feet. It's going to be a dex save, DC 23, and it's going to do 4d8 lightning damage, 4d8 thunder damage, and then Swallowing Earth, which might be the single most difficult one here. It's a strength saving throw of DC 23. It's a 90-foot cube, up to 150-foot range. It's 48 bludgeoning damage, 48 acid damage. On top of that, though, you are a buried target. You have the restrained condition. You're prone. You do have total cover, but you are suffocating. You are suffocating. So, as an action, a buried creature or another creature within 5 feet of it can make a DC 18 strength to get out of it. But suffocating, right? So this basically takes you out for 2 rounds. It also doesn't save you from being hit, by other things. Like, yes, you have total cover, so you'll be fine there. But like, if there's something else that's buried with you that can hurt you, I would still imagine you could probably still take some other types of damage. Maybe not. But either way, your other party members who avoided being buried are now going to fight this thing by themselves for at least a round. Maybe 2 if you don't make your save. So again, very difficult. It also has Rumbling Movement. If it moves up to its speed, fly speed, or swim speed without provoking opportunity attacks, each creature within 5 feet of the Cataclysm, as it moves, is targeted once by the following effect. You have a con save of 23. Failure, the target is prone. Again, when you're prone, especially if it's right next to you, it gets advantage to do its elemental burst. So again, these things can be pretty brutal, right? It is definitely one of the coolest monsters in here. Again, it's going to be very hard to kill, but again, I think it would be a very fun challenge for a very high-level party. It's just, I think you're going to have a lot of party members suffering these conditions, like being buried. Now, again, there's 1 in 4 chance of that happening each turn, right? If it's doing that ability. So yeah, maybe not. Maybe you get lucky on the die rolls. I don't know. But I feel like once that starts happening, there's some serious issues, and it could start wiping party members out pretty quick. So, yeah, there is that. Now, the next creature on my list that, again, this is a classic creature. This isn't just a D&D thing. It's the Kraken. I already talked about some of its abilities earlier. This thing has 481 hit points, an AC of 18, so it's not impossible to hit. It's pretty reasonable, for a high level or an epic level creature. It does have resistances to a ton of stuff. Bludgeoning, piercing, slashing. It's immune to fire, poison, the charm, frighten, like just a ton of different conditions. Like I could go on. It has legendary resistance 6 times per day though. So that means it's going to be making saves constantly against spells and stuff. Once it makes a tentacle attack, which is a plus 17. So it's almost guaranteed to make this hit. It does 46 plus 10 damage. You are grappled and restrained. Because it has multi-attack, it could then choose to swallow you with its second attack or fling you, just like we talked about earlier. The swallow, let's just start with the swallow. It's a dex DC of 25. You will take 3d8 plus 10 damage from being swallowed, and 7d6 acid damage. That is going to add up very quick, round after round of being in its stomach. Let's just pretend it didn't do that. Let's pretend it tried to fling you at somebody else. Well, it's a Dex DC save of 25, 4d8 damage. And they can do this, they can throw you 60 feet. That is a brutal, brutal creature. Krakens can do a lot of damage, just like the elemental Cataclysm. They are siege monsters, so you got to imagine you're going to be on a boat. Krakens can destroy boats so fast. Like, just the amount of damage they do, they can destroy boats and sink them in no time. Which then, for most characters, you're probably going to have a hard time trying to swim away. You're basically going to die pretty quickly. I can't imagine you could survive this. So again, Krakens, very lethal. The next one is probably the toughest monster in all of 2024 D&D, and this one would be the Tarrasque. This is the ultimate endgame monster. It is pretty impenetrable. It's very difficult to beat. This thing, like I said, is amazing. 697 hit points, first of all. That is almost double what the Kraken is, right? Like, almost. Maybe not. But you get what I'm saying. 697 compared to 481, drastically different. You're talking about over 200 more hit points, right? So that's a pretty big deal. AC of 25. You're going to struggle to hit this thing. You're going to be swinging a lot, and you're going to be missing a lot. Resistances to practically everything. Immune to fire, poison, charmed, frightened. Again, pretty much everything. Multi-attack. 4 attacks. It's going to make 1 bite attack, a bunch of claw attacks, a tail attack. Like, you know, he's got some options here. The bite, plus 19. 4d12 plus 10. You are grappled and restrained. If he does a claw attack, it's a plus 19. 4d8 plus 10. If it's a tail attack, it's plus 19. 3d8 plus 10, and you're knocked prone. If he does get you get you in a bite, the next round he's going to swallow you. Well, that's a DC 27. DC 27 and 16d6 acid damage. Pretty amazing there. Has an ability called the Thunderous Bellow, which is, again, a DC 27 save, and this does 12d12 damage. Then, you know, heck, if none of that sounds crazy, before he even gets to you, he has a world-shaking movement ability, which will knock you prone, and if you had a concentration spell going, well, not anymore. This is just if he does his full movement on a turn. You know, so like, again, he is really, really, really rough. Tarrasques are not something you want to mess with. I'm telling you guys, just find a way to run. DMs, if you throw a Tarrasque at your party, give them something to help them. Give them like a Colossus or something they can work with. Give them dragons who are helping them destroy the Tarrasque, because the Tarrasque is maybe destroying the earth that is causing these dragons' caves to collapse. Do something, but help your party handle a Tarrasque, because they are brutal. The last one I want to end it on is technically a new creature in here, and it is a Arch-Hag. The Arch-Hag is, again, brand spanking new. It's got 333 hit points and an AC of 20. This is not an impossible creature to face. The thing that kind of will make it difficult is it might have 2 more hags with it. Heck, maybe I don't know if you can have 3 Arch-Hags in a coven. I think it might be just 1 and then 2 regular hags or other types of hags. But with that said, you can do whatever you want in your game. One of the things it can do is called a Spiteful Escape. The Spiteful Escape, if you drop the Arch-Hag to 0 hit points, if the Arch-Hag's anathema is not there, within 30 feet of it, well, it will respawn somewhere else. Kind of like a lich, right? It'll take some days or whatever, so it won't actually be dead. So to actually defeat an Arch-Hag, you're going to have to figure out the thing that it hates the most. So that might take some research. That might create some interesting roleplay opportunities. So again, this is part of the reason an Arch-Hag is so difficult. It has legendary actions called a Hag Swipe, which allows it to do its Spectral Claw attack. You have the Spectral Claw attack, which is a plus 14. It can reach 10 feet, but it can also do this up to 60-foot range. It does a 3d6 plus 7 damage and knocks you prone when it does it. It also has an ability called the Crackling Wave, which is a dex save of 22. It's a 60-foot cone. It does 5d12 damage, and you are cursed with no reaction. If anyone is cursed, the Arch-Hag, as a bonus action, can do a Witch Strike that attacks everybody who's cursed within 60 feet of it for 4d6 lightning damage. So the Arch-Hag can also be very formidable for your players. So those are just a few of my favorite monsters from the new Monster Manual. Each one brings something, I think, unique to the table. It's going to give you different types of campaigns you can run and things like that. I hope you were able to look at this, get some inspiration for some of the creatures. Maybe some of the abilities inspired you. Maybe you're just like, oh, I got a party that's overconfident and thinks they're too powerful. And you're thinking, maybe one of these monsters will set them straight. Give it a shot, right? And let me know in the comments how you did that. With that said, which monster from this video do you like the most? And bonus points if there's other monsters that you think are just as formidable in these tiers or more so. Would love to hear that in the comments as well. This was Master the Game. I am Juice. Game on.